So it keeps me busy, and there's, I can only golf so many times before I run out of money or run out of patience.
I could argue that, but I see what you're getting at. I understand your point.
And Nigel and I work together, so that, like they always say, test the stain out to see a little spot to see how it looks, but you never do
on
that.
the back of the board. Nobody ever does it, right?
Right?
Nobody ever
so
does.
I actually had,
We actually don't even bother because we're running a Mickey Mouse operation, right? Like we call ourselves podcast apprentices all the time. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, an actual podcast, right? Are you guys comfortable sitting down? You good?
Good.
All right. Welcome everybody to the iShower After Work podcast, a podcast for all things trades and trades related. I would normally be coming to you from the job trailer with John, but something a little different today. I am on location, Halifax, Nova Scotia, I guess Fall River, Nova Scotia. First international recording we're going to have here. John is back home in the Midwest. He's manning the job trailer for us. But as always, first and foremost, check out our social medias. iSaw website is isawpodcast.com. That's where you're going to find everything. Our Buy Us a Beer app widget is on there. It's a free podcast we're offering here. So if you want to show us a little love, John and I would just like to say thanks to all the recent supporters from the Buy Us a Beer app on our website. It means a ton to us. So if you can check that out and let us know, we'd appreciate it. All right, that's the business. A lot of us throughout the trades have another job or financial hobby outside our day-to-day. The side hustle is what we commonly say. And it's a way for you not only to use your own skills in a different way, maybe for fun, maybe you want to pad the retirement, maybe you're going to buy a toy or two. Well, my guests today are doing just that. We have at least a cursory knowledge, most of us, of the TV shows and even podcasts about the reasonable size homes, cabins, and portable businesses for people that's vernacularly known as tiny homes. Well, in the spirit of that, I have the two gentlemen with me today from Tiny Homes Atlantic. You can find them simply at Tiny Homes Atlantic on Instagram. A couple of OG followers for our Instagram and listeners to our podcast. I have a husband, father of two, teacher by day, contractor by night, and from personal experience, better than half-decent golfer. Nigel Mailman is with us. Hey, Nigel.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
If no problem, buddy. And sitting behind him is the other driving force behind the Tiny Homes Boys gig. Retired educator who's moved on to greener pastures, father of two great kids, and coincidentally, the brother of one of the hottest new podcasters on the internet, my big brother, Greg McKinnon. Hi, Greg.
Good to see you, little brother.
Yes. Gentlemen, welcome to the iShower After Work podcast. I'm happy to have you.
Excited to be not in the job trailer.
Excited to be not in the job trailer.
Because every time I listened to the podcast when I first started, I said, I can't wait to be in the job trailer.
Well, next time we get you into the Midwest, we'll definitely have another record and we'll follow up with tiny homes from the actual job trailer, one of the two. So, and I had to get a shameless plug for myself in there. I know this is Greg's first time, but Nigel, this is your first podcast, buddy?
Yeah, first podcast.
First podcast. Yeah. All right. Well, congratulations, man. We always like virgins on this show. This is good. Give me the quick intro of Nigel. Tell me quick about your family, what you do for work now.
Yeah, so I father, a son of electrician,
great,
contractor. Great. My dad grew up on a farm, so he was one of those guys. He never, ever called anyone in to do any repairs ever in our house. So he's just a guy that did the plumbing, did the electrical, framed up stuff, built a deck, whatever. So I think I took a big piece of that with me as I kind of grew up to become a father and hope soon hit retirement, hopefully in the next few years.
Fingers crossed, buddy.
Fingers crossed. So we were just, Dad was always one of those, if it needs to be done, we'll just figure out a way to do it. And I kind of did the same. And I had some summer jobs before teaching where I did roofing for a summer. I built wharfs for a summer. Did some carpentry, worked with my father. He had ran an electrical company for years. And so I did some stuff with him. And I always was just one of those, people that if, I needed to fix something, I fixed it. So I had two boys came along. I'm kind of busy with the two boys all the time. We're running through soccer fields to hockey rinks. And
what's your boys' names?
Matthew and Ben.
Ben, yeah, shout out, kids. How are you?
Yeah, so Matt's my oldest, and he's soon to be hopefully Canada Games provincial soccer goalkeeper.
Oh, excellent! Very good.
Yeah,
very good.
Ben's the up and comer. He's 9, so he's starting to get his get into all the sports, and he's doing some soccer and hockey and basketball, and so both boys are very active, so they keep me very busy. So it's in the summertime that I kind of find some time to kind of build some stuff on the side. It's kind of a side hustle.
That could be said for a lot of us probably. And but your day-to-day job, because this is sort of a side gig for you, you're a teacher, right? You're an educator?
Yeah. So I was teacher, then vice principal for almost 10 years. And I kind of went back into the classroom as a teacher, and 'cause that's where I kind of like to be. And yeah, so I've got a background in physical education, a degree in mathematics, what else? A Bachelor of Science, and a minor in humanities. So I kind of do it all. But funny enough, I find the math comes in handy, though, when you're building things and trying to work out slope of roofs and angles that you need to cut stuff at.
We talk about it all the time on the podcast. It's crazy because people are like, oh, when am I ever going to use geometry and take trigonometry? Every single day. Like, it really happens. So
the first time I whipped out my calculator and ran a sine function, my dad was like, what are you doing? He was trying to build a template for a roof truss. And I was like, no, it's this. It's like 72.5 degrees.
Right. And he was just winging it.
And he was just
this looks good.
So I went zip, cut it, and it perfect fit, right? So he's like, oh, that math. All
I
right.
like it. That's good. Very good. And obviously, Big Brother, I know, but for the people who don't, you were in education. What is it you do now? I forget the name of your actual career now.
Oh, I'm working a group home now.
Okay, group home. That's right. Yeah. And I know from fact you put a lot of hours in there. So the fact that you have any time for an extra little gig is wild to me. John and I were talking about before I got up here, like, how do these guys find the time? But for you too, man. So married, and obviously my niece and nephew, shout them out.
Absolutely. Haley and Connor.
My favorite kids in the world. No offense, I haven't met Matt and Ben yet, but I'm sure they're great kids as well. So off the bat here, Nigel, what is it that Tiny Homes Atlantic is doing?
So I started because my parents had an old RV, 35-foot RV up on a lake in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, and it was, as all RVs do, it was slowly rotting, decaying, and the floor was rotten and stuff. And so as we were messing around with it, trying to fix it, I was like, why don't we just strip this thing off and just build new, like right from scratch? Because we just spend so much time frigging around with it. So so Dad was like, yeah, it might be something we could consider doing. And then the tiny home started to kind of peek out on you'd see some stuff on YouTube, and there was Tiny House Living was a show I started seeing. And so I was always one of those guys who would sketch floor plans. So that I built 3 homes, I think, that I built, and I did the floor plans for all 3 homes, including the home I live in now. So I always used to sketch floor plans. I'd done it since I was a kid. So I sketched up a few tiny homes and frigged around with it. And then I finally just said to my father, who was, pushing 70 years old, I said, why don't we do this summer? Let's build this tiny home and see what we think, and we'll just sell it. And so Dad was like, yeah, babe. So it was just a great kind of father-son project for the summer for us to do something. And that was a learning curve, that first one. But then that first one, I got a call. I had it on a Kijiji ad for sale, and I got a call from a lady running the home show in 2016. And she was like, we'd love to have your tiny home in the home show, because no one was really building them then in Nova Scotia.
Right. I
was probably one of the first to actually build one.
And for everybody listening who's not from Canada, Kijiji is like Craigslist.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace.
Facebook Marketplace.
It's a Canadian version of that.
So we finished up in time to bring it to the home show in March that year, and I created a little website at the time and email, and we passed out some cards, and it just blew up. And I was getting so many requests and emails, and so I couldn't even keep up with it. So I kind of realized at that point it was bad for business to be 2 weeks before I got back to someone. So I kind of shut all that down, said this is crazy, but certainly there's a demand. So we sold that initial one. It was a young couple actually from New Brunswick. They pulled it up to a farm in Fredericton. And that's where they were going to live for a little bit until they were going to build a house the fall, a couple years after they managed to save some money up. So that one ended up going there. And then literally just word of mouth, I would get random calls. Can you build one? What do you do? You get a lot of tire kickers too that are just curious about it.
That's going to happen, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but so one kind of led to another one that we built for a lady. My father and I built for a lady in Yarmouth, and then I built a big 40 by 12 on a custom trailer that Greg helped tow up to Bridgewater, empty. we built it on site. But yeah, towing a 12-foot wide trailer on a rainy day and a dirt road is not fun.
Yeah, like I got some questions about that later. I really do.
So anyway, that kind of snowballed to that. And then Greg was really interested. And so the next one we built, I got Greg on board and we built it in his yard. And then we sold that one. Well, actually, I ended up buying that one, putting it on a piece of property I had. And then I eventually sold that one just this spring. And then, yeah, so it kind of almost, every year we build one and then sell it. And I use that money kind of help, pay for a vacation or pay for all the sports. And just a little,
that
little
does bring
income.
up, that brings up actually a question I want to get off right off the bat here. So everybody knew, what do you consider it? Is it a business? It is a hobby, a side hustle? What do you guys call it when you think about it in your heads, Greg?
I think it's definitely a side hustle.
Definitely a side hustle. Okay.
And I don't know what things are like in the States right now, but in Canada, there's like 6 out of 10 people are all working a second job to make ends meet because inflation is high, gas is high. Unlike the States, liquor is really expensive here. Food is really expensive.
Normally we'd have 4 roses for all our guests, which is what we do out of the job trailer 90% of the time. John, if you're listening, I'm sorry we didn't do it. Oh my God, is it expensive to liquor store here, buddy? It would have put the podcast into the red in a minute.
I tend to tell people it's just a hobby, right? So when I get inquiries about, can you build? Can we meet? Can you do design? I'm just like, it's just a hobby. I do one a year, but if you're really interested, I'll start. We're starting another build next March or next April.
Right, realistic expectations.
So so I kind of set it that this isn't something where I'm going to be spending 20, 30 hours with you just planning and then nothing kind of come out of it. So it's just I'm pretty clear. It's just a hobby, something for.
And I certainly learned that from Nigel too, because, if you pre-order them, people want them pre-built, pre-whatever. They come in, they have 8,000 things they want done. And then you do all those things. You spend all kinds of time with them and then they don't buy it. So Nigel was very upfront about that at first. He's like, no. I was like, oh, this person is interested. They want this and this and this and this. And Nigel's just like, just slow down, Greg. Just relax,
right. No customization.
No customization.
Right.
So really, it is just best to, because everyone who comes to look at them, someone came and looked at one Saturday for us. They asked all the same thing, oh, do you take pre-orders? Do you do all that stuff? I said, no. We just sort of, it's kind of a hobby. We like to bang nails. So we just kind of pick away at one. And then when it's ready, we sell it.
Bang nails, drink.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, we're all about having a drink while you work after hours. So you're like, this is a side project for you guys for sure.
And for me, I actually love just spending the day, just kind of building something. And at the end of the day, you get this, nice product and you've provided a home for someone who needs a home, which is kind of nice. And we make some money on the side doing it too. So it's a win-win all around. It's just a way for me to decompress actually and it keeps me busy in the summer because I'm someone that has to be busy.
Sure.
So it keeps me busy, and there's, I can only golf so many times before I run out of money or run out of patience.
I could argue that, but I see what you're getting at. I understand your point.
Sure. Nigel and I work together, so that, to be honest, I wasn't interested. I just wore him down because, we taught together, for years at different schools. We're actually business partners in a rental property business as well. So, we've hung out all this time. So I was just basically like, hey, when can I push your dad out of the way? When can I get enrolled in this?
Okay, so you guys already had a business relationship before this, and so that's good.
Friends, right? Business relationship, but really, and both of us, I'm kind of retired now. He still has the 2 younger kids. I'm sort of on the other end. I'm not so busy, but I was there. When he calls me and he's like, maybe I got 2 hours on Saturday. I'm like, I remember those days when I was at football, taekwondo, piano lessons, swimming lessons, hockey every day of the week. He's got 2 boys. I only had 1 boy, 1 girl. So, I kind of get it. But a nice way for us to kind of, in a couple of years too, when he's looking at retirement, we'll keep doing this. So we'll keep doing something, but it kind of builds our skills.
Right. Yeah. And so just to be clear, you had already done 2 of these and then Greg pushed his way in, weaseled your dad out?
I probably did 3 actually. I think because I did, we built one for mom and dad for their cottage and I built one for my cottage. I built another one for the lady in Yarmouth. Actually did 4. And then you're my 5th, I think. And then we built the 6th. Yeah. So we've done 2 of them now. We did
and
one.
You say your average is about a year, give or take?
Yeah. It doesn't take that long to build one, but this one's been dragging out because it was around October. We would kind of done the inside grunt work and it was paint and trim and stuff like that need to be done. But because it's winter in Canada, we get winter, this thing known as winter. So we couldn't really do any painting or sanding or anything like that without having power hooked up to it to run heaters all night long.
Right.
So we just kind of really, I think you said it was like November 11th. We pretty much just stopped until March.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You can see all those shows on TV where people are doing kind of, not as a hobby, but full time. They have a big Quonset hut or they have a big building.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You can see why they have it. I'm like, why do they need that?
Yeah. Temperature control.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the first one we built together, the fifth one of Nigel's.
Yeah.
I remember a couple days it was like -17, -18. It's windy, it's snowy.
Yeah.
That's Celsius, by the way, not Fahrenheit.
Cold.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're in Canada,
Yeah,
folks.
so in
Everything
Canada,
we're going to
so
be in Celsius.
I know it does
metric
even
system.
out about -32 or whatever, but -18 Celsius and the wind is cold.
So that one, I remember. So we, when we do our, we do a metal roof and metal siding often with some wood accent, but the metal roof, we spray foam right bare to the metal roof, right? So it seals it all up really well. If ever water gets through the seam of the metal roof, it just hits closed cell spray foam. It can't creep anywhere.
Nice.
But then when the spray foamers came in, it was we had heat on, but there was so much condensation because it was so cold outside that the metal, remember that, Greg? The metal roof was just dripping wet.
Drip,
and
drip,
so
drip.
they got in there and like, we can't, the spray foam won't stick to it. We can't do the roof today. So we actually had to wait for a warmer day to kind of do
And run the
roof.
heater for,
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
week or a few days or
Oh, and
whatever.
see, and I never thought of that part of the whole thing either. Like, because again, they have all the nice Quonset huts and everything on the shows. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, it's something I was a little confused about, and Greg actually brought it up last night, and I'm glad he did. I think I might have been a little misunderstanding about what you're doing. I thought that you were building these in Connex boxes like you'd see on a container ship, but you're not.
No.
You're building them in trailers off of like a tractor trailer, right?
Yeah, so we had a custom design trailer. So I contacted a couple guys a few years ago, different fabricators, trailer fabricators, and this one guy had built me a small utility trailer, and I was like, have you thought about doing something like this? And he's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean, tiny home. Yeah, I watched the show, and yeah, I'd love to build a trailer for you. So we built, like, one of the things is for me was like having a flat deck. So you don't want to be working up around wheel wells when you're trying to put a kitchen in and stuff like that. So we build like complete deck overs, flat deck. He had post holders welded right into the frame. So when you put your 4x4 or 6x6 post on to support and level your tiny home, it's bolted right into the frame of the trailer. It's not just on jacks that will
Well, that's good.
that were
thinking
rich
ahead.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
so there's a few things that we kind of had very intentionally purpose built into the trailer. So now I just forgot your question, but
Oh, no,
So
Yeah.
that was the first one. So that was
Yeah.
the first one we built together. That was a 24.5x8
yeah.
trailer. That we built the first one. This one's actually in a Connex box or a container. We call them
Yeah.
shipping containers.
Shipping
here.
containers,
Shipping
yeah.
container,
You
yeah,
call
we
them
call
Connex
them
boxes,
boxes,
whatever.
Yeah.
So
So this,
you could ask us about the difference actually
Yeah.
about one versus the other. There's a lot of differences
Yeah.
for both too.
Now, when you were first starting this, Greg, was there skills that you didn't have that you had to learn as you went? And I mean, say, did you understand plumbing? Did you understand electrical? Like, what did you have to learn as you go? And how did you learn them? Like YouTube University? Where were you getting that from?
So like Nigel talked a little bit about it earlier. Like both of us had that same sort of experience. Nigel's dad grew up on a farm. My dad grew up as a fisherman, but then worked construction. I worked, building houses for a couple summers and then excavating. But it really wasn't really my father I learned those skills from. Is when I first got to teaching. I became friends with one of the shop teachers at the school, and he's like, "Hey, you want to, I'm working on this project of the weekend, or I'm doing this. You want to come help me, or hey, do you want to come chainsaw wood for the, the day, or you want to come help me build my deck or come build my house?"
Nice.
So that all sort of spiraled into, just being that extra person helping out, and all of a sudden you're building your own decks, and all of a sudden you're doing your own renovations at your house, and so there is certainly the odd thing that that you don't really know how to do or you forget, roof flashing, for example. Nigel's a little bit better at that.
Making sure it's
But,
done right is important. Yeah.
Sometimes I got to watch the YouTube video about how to with no break to do it. Like, okay, snip. He's a master with the 10 snips.
Nice.
I'll give him that. Do this 45, cut this, whatever, fold it over. Nigel definitely had a little bit of the advantage because he had done, a couple before. So,
I made all my mistakes by the time I got to Greg.
That's handy to have that.
But
actually.
we'd still have, but you'd be shocked about, when you're building a tiny house, because, Nigel would say this, and I wouldn't really, now I take it to heart. We would literally have conversations for 2 hours about whether to move this wall 4 inches to the left or 4 inches to the right, because it's all about literally inches. Like, is this sofa will fit here? This will take 4 inches away from the kitchen. Is an extra 3 inches in the bathroom worth making the bedroom a double bed or a queen bed.
Yeah. You're dealing when you're dealing in such a small space. Every inch counts.
Speaking of which, what's the square footage of the one you're building right now? Before you put any walls or anything like that, what was the size of the trailer?
So the container.
Container.
Connex. What do you call it?
Wait, Connex. Yeah.
Connex. Yeah. So they come in standard. It's 20 by 8 or 40 by 8. So we built a 40-footer.
Okay, 40-footer.
And there's a reason why we went with the container this time. Is because like the cost of trailers doubled. So like the last trailer we built on cost more than the shipping container.
Right. Okay.
So
probably 50% more than the shipping container.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when we
were talking, for a 24 by 8 trailer, it's 50% more than an 8 by 40 container.
Yeah. So
with no walls, no ceiling, no floor.
So, and I've kind of always wanted to try a container build too, and figure out how to flash those windows and doors on a corrugated wall and stuff. And like all of it's just kind of problem solving and figuring things out, which I like doing. But that was a big reason why I went with the shipping container this time, was because the cost of the trailers just got so much. And, when you get a shipping container, you already have your sealed roof, your walls, your floor, everything's done. So it's just a matter of...
They're pretty weatherproof right out of the
gates.
Yeah, that does help.
They're insect proof, they're storm proof, fireproof. There's so many good things.
Oh, I'm sure mice proof is probably important too, right?
Yeah, like everything. So if you're using this as a cottage in the woods on a lake or something, you're not going to be there for 6 months a year. Shipping container is an ideal base, right?
Did that change your the way that you were able to do your construction? Because I assume that's just on blocks or on the ground or something then now instead of the trailer?
Yeah. So
was there any problems with not having it up out of the moisture or anything like that when you were going?
No.
Actually, the only part of problem having container is a trailer, to get them spray foamed on the bottom, has to be so far up in the air.
Sure.
So, of course, the trailer is already up in the air. So we had to jack the container up just high enough. Yeah. Did they want 24 inches?
They
wanted 36, but I think we got up to 32 and they were good with that. So, it's up about that high off the ground on blocks.
I think they weigh about 20,000 pounds, which is...
I'm not sure off the top of my head. That sounds about right.
So our tiny house, our 24-foot by 8.5-foot tiny homes finished would weigh about 7,000 pounds. So pretty much any pickup truck could tow it. But yeah, this big shipping container comes in and, you got to get it up and try to get it level. So when you're building inside, and that's the other funny thing about like trying to build on a trailer or on a shipping container, if, you never get it perfectly level because, the ground shifts and moves and posts sink. And so you can't really trust a level when you're building. So you got to trust your measurements when you're trying to build walls that are straight and all that kind of.
That's definitely one thing I learned too.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that. That's an excellent point.
I've never done something where I never use the level so little.
Right. Greg couldn't get his head around it for the first month.
No.
Like, just put the level on. I'm like, no.
No, just like the ground's not level, man. The containers like this. Go look outside. I'm like, no, we have to use the level.
Yeah, that'd be hard for any person who's used to work in construction to break that habit.
Yeah.
Because we use them so much. I mean, as an electrician, every piece of pipe, every box, it's so noticeable when they're off kilter a little. I had a job years ago where I was putting something simple, 2 pieces of stainless steel pipe from the ground up and hook into a box, and then they were going to feed a couple motors on the ground. Yeah. The guy was running the safety and like details for the plan. He's like, no, those 2 are crooked. Well, I took a laser level. I didn't have a level. I used a laser level and I turned it on and they were perfectly straight up and down.
Yeah.
Well, he goes, oh, no, see that seam in the wall? And I said, do you mean where they put the Spancrete together? He's like, I want it to match that because since it doesn't, it's a little off. I'm like, wait, you want me to waste 4 hours of work because it looks off? Like, it's level. It's unbelievable how many people like have to dig into that. So, yeah I never would have thought of the trailer being off kilter like that. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me.
And you try to get it, like when we said it, we try to get it as level as you can.
But it has settled quite a bit over the winter.
Yeah, I bet.
Your dad mentioned it to me the other day. It's like, you guys leveled the trailer back out again the other day. No. That end just sunk a bunch in the past week.
The frost melted. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's it. Like when you get the frost heave and the soil raises up and down 5-6 inches sometimes, right? So.
You did ask before though about new skills we learn and things like that. It's definitely working in small spaces and making all those decisions about where to put things. Nigel's really good about keeping the water all along one wall. So it kind of matches. So the pipes aren't freezing. Little things like that. We did actually a really nice thing in this one. Nigel's idea, I'll give him credit for that, where the shipping container doors open at the end is actually a little like service utility room. So that's just a 3-foot false wall in there. So that's where the hot water tank, the pressure tank, the electrical panel, the ventilation system.
Will the access to that still be the same handles that were on, or did you make some sort of door?
Same.
I actually took them all off when we spray painted the outside of the container and put them all back on.
Oh, wow.
So they still look nice and chromy.
All right, well, that's good. Yeah, that's matters, because I was going to ask
Nigel
that.
let me paint them over them, but I was like, no, I wanted to look.
You wanted to look good. Yeah, because that's what I was wondering is, it seemed to me as I thought about this whole thing, if I was the one doing it, which obviously I've never had any involvement in it at all, was the conservation of space. You need a spot for your electrical panel, you need a spot for your hot water heater, etc. And then making sure you had enough room. You said it was a job of inches. Do we sacrifice 3 for this? Want a double bed? Those little details are stuff that like real construction professionals are dealing with all the time. And you guys are obviously dealing with it right now. How much, because you're not building the same thing exactly every single time, are you?
No.
It's not a set.
No, I've got kind of a layout. Everyone's different though. Every build is different. The plumbing's run different. I like every time I do the flashing on the roof, and I probably do that trim a different way every time. I just kind of look and go, I'll fold this over here and do a 45, and that will work and look nice and neat. And
right.
I don't think I've ever done 2 the same yet.
Have you considered there might be some value to doing that, where you could just sort of not mindlessly, but much more simple. No, this is how we did it last time. It'll save me time. I don't have to think it out. Have there been any conversations about simplifying the whole thing?
So I think, I don't know, Greg, like I think I built the same shape, 24 by 8.5 shed roof, same window location, same plan, same floor plan for the builds. Like they were identical, different exterior every time, different accent every time. Slightly different, maybe cabinet size inside, but generally they've been the same.
There's only so many ways to actually lay out a small space.
Sure.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, when people look at if they have a look at Tiny Homes Atlantic on Instagram, whatever, they'll kind of see the layout. But the bathroom is really sort of the only thing that is kind of the change. Maybe sometimes you could have a loft if it's a tiny home, but I think if you don't want to have stairs, which a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
When we first started, getting a lot of people, they're intimidated by the loft.
Sure.
So that's why I thought this time, Nigel, is a good idea if we go with the container. Well, the bedroom's at one end. If you're looking at it from right to left, the left end's the bedroom. Then there's the kitchen. Then there's the living room, kitchen in the middle, bathrooms at the end. So the only way to kind of make that a little bit different is to have the bathroom kind of come out, by the bedroom with a little hallway.
Sure. Okay.
And just so it doesn't, go all the way across.
Kind of like an RV would do.
Yeah, kind of like an RV would do. But that's really the only kind of way, So actually, for the layout of this one, I had some ideas. I looked at some similar size apartments, brand new apartments that are going up in Halifax, and they have very similar, 1-bedroom apartments. That's how long they're laid out. Bedrooms at one end, living room, kitchen, bathroom at the other. So.
It makes sense. Go with whatever kind of the industry standard is. It makes a lot of sense.
And I think if we ended up building another container, I actually really like this layout.
Yeah, no, it's.
I would keep this layout again.
See, try like I think like when I'm building, I probably sketched up 40 or 50 different floor plans on the very first one, and when you find something you just like, that's probably the most efficient use of space, like this exact layout. That's just what we've been building. It's just that like you just find what is the most efficient way to lay this out that you're not wasting any space anywhere. And so the 24-foot floor plan we have is like the floor plan we use. And it's that now we've tweaked the bathroom a little bit here and there where I think I put a corner shower in one, and I did a different, like a stand-in shower in a different one. But by and large, they're the same.
But, it's what people want to use it for too.
Yeah,
like we talk a lot about that. If it's if you're living in it full time, well then do you really need to have a Murphy bed, or do you need to have a bed that's up in the air with the stairs that go up to it with your like desk underneath where you work every day? Probably yes. If it's a weekender, where you're just coming and you just want to lay your head down, but you have a big outside deck, and you're that doubles, triples your living space or whatever, well then you're not really worried about hanging out in the desk underneath your bed.
Right. That's just for when it's raining.
Right. That's when it's raining. So a lot of it's like, what's your sort of end use about, how you're going to maximize the space. A big challenge we had on this one, we literally tried for a month to squeeze in a full-size washer dryer. Like literally every day I would come back to it. Nigel would come back to it. Nigel would say no. I'd say yes. And I'm just like, come on, can we just please, please, please? Because I envisioned this, if what happens probably if we don't sell one, well, one of us just buys it and we use that for the next tiny cabinet or the next cottage or the next, whatever, till a year or two, then we sell it. Anyway, so I was like, no, I'd really like to have that. We just couldn't make it happen. We just could not make it happen.
Fit. Like in fact, it's
every bathroom combination.
We've probably got a $200 wire going to where the dryer was supposed to be. That's just left in the wall because I said to Greg, I'm like, when we got the shower in place, remember we got the shower in place, we had some other stuff there. And I'm like, look, like if this washer dryer comes out to here, you can't even, there's no room to even open the door to put clothes in. And he was like, oh yeah. So I was like, it just doesn't fit. And then we'd have to move the wall of the bathroom, 6 inches this way. And then, is it really, so we just went with a washer dryer combo, put it underneath the kitchen cabinet, like is done every year everywhere in Europe.
Everywhere in Europe, yeah.
They've been doing it for years.
Someone came in the other day and said, "Oh, you have a European washer dryer."
Yeah. So it's funny, oh, yeah. like some of that stuff I've done before, but it took a lot of convincing for me to say it's not going to work.
Now I get it.
We just got to do it this way because it's not something for you. It's something that we're just trying to market to other people, right? So.
Well, that's the deal. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out what keeps making that noise on your mic.
Oh, I think I know what it is. I think
Nigel's got the Jimmy leg.
Yeah, no, I think it was up against the couch when we moved the couch.
Yeah,
yep. Don't worry, this happens all the time. Yeah. Shout out to my buddy Doug, our very first guest, kept pulling on the Velcro from his work pants. He came right from work, and he was nervous, and I had to stop him halfway through. Like, everybody can hear that, man. So
that's what it was. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not
here's that. And another thing we haven't talked about a little bit too is cost. But some of the things we were talking about, even though it's a tiny home, which people don't understand. Tiny homes still have to have, every home has to have a shower,
right?
A toilet, a vanity,
cooking facilities,
a sink, a fridge,
an electrical panel,
an electric panel,
hot water heater,
a hot water heater, a pressure tank. So it doesn't matter how small the house is, it all has to have that. Yeah. So some people think, you can build them for next to nothing. It's not really the case. Like there's still a lot of things that all those buildings sort of have. So that's the other thing too. This one is probably a little nicer because we actually decided to put the ones before Nigel's always put a apartment size fridge in. This time we actually put, instead of like an induction stovetop or an induction hot plate or whatever, this one has an apartment size stove, a microwave, with the fume hood or whatever built in or whatever.
We had a little more space to play with.
A little more space to play with, so that makes it a little bit sort of nicer too.
Well, see, that brings up something I was going to talk about later, but we can jump ahead. That's no problem. You were talking about the cost because certain things have to go in there. So I'll start with you, Greg. I mean, this is right from today's homeowner.com. I am going to put this up on the socials, and this will be on the show notes. It says the average cost, and I did look in Canada because we're in the motherland here, fellas. The average cost of a tiny home, it says, is $52,000. Without calling you two out, Greg, what's a more realistic build cost of what you and Nigel are doing? Higher or lower than that is the only thing I'm asking here. Is 52 about right, or is it way more, less, pretty close?
Oh, just how much materials you mean?
You're talking about cost to build
To build, not your sale cost. What it costs you to build. Is it around that amount? Does that sound fair? 52?
Absolutely. I'd say almost just materials for this build, you could easily be close to 50,000 Canadian.
Yeah.
And that's, you haven't included, any labor, for Nigel and I, any of the work that we get done for electrical.
All the sourcing of material.
The spray foam labors we have to get, the sourcing materials. Yeah. All the time we're, Nigel's making calls, getting materials. I'm going to my trailer, getting something. What kind of drove me nuts in the early days was, like, I know how much went into, in terms of just material,
right,
went into the first build, and I know how much in terms of planning and sketching and designing and thinking and calling a whole bunch of different suppliers to get the best deal on sheet metal, to get the best deal on cedar, so I know now where to go to make but the first time through, I spent hundreds of hours just on the planning stuff, and just making the calls and doing the sketching and figuring things out. And that first build was the slowest and it was the most labor intensive. But I had to have 32,000 in that build, and that was 2015, 2016, and that'd be about 25,000 Canadian. But on TV, they were showing all these, shows about, oh, this person built it for $14,000 and this person built it for 12 and it was just like, it wasn't even within the realm of possibility what they were proposing on these shows as what these builds were costing.
It is why I asked. Yeah. I took a couple looks at some tiny home nations. I listened to a couple podcasts about tiny homes. It sounded to me like their numbers were pretty low. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're reclaiming wood or they got deals with people tearing stuff down or what. But yeah, these 14, 20, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So I had a lady one time reach out, and she had access to an old church that was being torn down and all the lumber in the old church. And she's like, really wanted me to build with this reclaimed lumber. And she's like, so you won't have any lumber costs. I said, yeah, but just wait though. Like, I can't frame a wall without lumber that's perfectly cut to length. Every stud has to be perfect. So if I'm using reclaimed lumber, I have to check the lumber to make sure there's no nails anywhere in it, because when I put my finish on, my drywall or whatever, you can't have a nail head sticking out. So I would have to clean every board. I'd have to put every board on a chop saw, cut it perfectly to length. Every board has to be milled the exact same thickness. So if you're talking about an old church that was built 1880s, 1920s, it's probably hand-milled lumber.
Right.
So I'd have to put every board through planer. I said, I can tell you for sure you will triple your costs for me to try to use reclaimed lumber. So is it worth it to you to make, because it's going to cost more. It's not going to save you anything. And she's like, oh, I never thought of that.
Because then it's only for the nostalgia for that person of having the wood, be able to say, oh, well, I have the wood from the old church, or the aesthetic of it, how it looks. I can see that. Yeah.
And I had another guy I was doing a bill with, and they wanted to use some used windows, right? Some pre-owned windows. And I said, look, in my experience, I'm not saying this is the case, but in my experience, if someone took a window out to replace it, the window probably leaks.
Right.
That's the only reason.
They didn't replace a good window.
Yeah. So I was like, if you're wanting to use this window in this build, then I'm just telling you, it's probably not a good window. It's probably leaking. It's probably fogged, whatever. But I can't guarantee it's gonna not leak. And he's like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm telling you, you're buying someone else's problems if you're trying to use like old windows or old siding or old shingles or old whatever, or an old stove. You're probably buying someone else's problem, and you'd be better off just going new right from the start. You know what you got.
And see, that's good advice, because a lot of us will try to do that, especially if you're building just a little, like in this case, you guys are doing this professionally and then thinking about either selling them, leasing them, putting them on somebody's land. But for a lot of people who are doing their own projects just for, say, like a lake cabin, they will try to do that to cut costs. And it's really good advice. Buying somebody else's problem. I'm putting that in the show notes. That's a really good point.
I would say, so I figured it out one time. We're probably about, on this current build, like $225 a square foot. So, I don't know what the Canada standard is, like how much it is per square foot, but we're about $225 a square foot for this one.
Yeah, I'll say this, I think, so I'm going to use numbers from like pre-COVID, before 30% inflation.
We're going to talk about that later. Go ahead. Yeah.
But yeah, like the cost to build a home in Canada, like a typical 1,500 or 2,000 square foot home, was something around $120 a square foot back then, finished, 100% finished. And my cost on a tiny home 8x12 was somewhere around $220, $240.
It's not bad.
And again, like, it's for people, because like when the other part of what bothered me when I would list these homes, and we were talking about these TV shows, given the false expectation that, the home would cost $14,000. Exactly. Like, people would be like, hey, is it made of gold, or, you'd get these comments, and I'm like, or someone would off the cuff offer me half of what I was asking for it. And I'm like, that doesn't even cover my material. Like, you don't understand. Like, I could build a tiny house for $20,000, but it's going to leak. It's going to be drafty. You won't be able to heat it. Like,
it's an empty shell of nothing.
Yeah. Like, it's just, why bother building something like that? Like, so if I'm building it, I want to spend the extra on spray foam. And I had to sell spray foam on Greg too, because, Greg was like, well, but regular fiberglass insulation is so much cheaper. And I'm like, just wait and see. And
we could do all the work ourselves. I never want to contract anything out.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, no, we'll do it. We'll do it.
But that first spray foam, you were like, oh my God, I totally understand why. Like, everything's just so rigid. It's so tight. It's airtight. It's watertight. It's rodent proof. Like, it's just.
Yeah. The cost for value there is huge. I'm sure. No one went, and we joke about it on the podcast all the time. Listen, I know there's women out there in the trades. I'm not gendering or anything, but we always say, like, if you don't have to call a guy, great. But sometimes you got to call a guy.
Yeah, like and like I can buy spray foam kits. I even priced it up. I'm like, if I do the suit and buy the kit,
Of course you did.
like, and then, but the cost per square foot was actually more to buy these small kits, and like rather than have the company come in and they just do it and they know what they're doing and they know how to do it and they clean it up and they walk out. Like
we actually have a running joke about what the best thing about every build is.
Yeah. So shout out to Maritime Insulators. They do a wonderful job.
All right.
Oh, and Greenfoot.
Yeah. And Greenfoot Energy. Greenfoot did my last one.
Yeah,
so,
Greenfoot did our last
but yeah,
one.
like people don't know, like, you know, when they're like, you know, it's so expensive. Well, you know, A, you're getting, you know, a nice, comfortable place to live in when people are living in tents all over North America. But B, like, just that spray foam insulation was a $10,000 insulation job. But, you know, yeah, I could put fiberglass pink, or some guy has some shipping container or Connex box for sale for $60,000, and it's less than ours. But I can assure you he does not have a $10,000 spray foam job in it.
No, exactly. It's whatever came out of the. It's whatever came out. So real quick, like John is on with us here, even though we can't see or hear him. He wanted to ask a couple of questions as we go. All right,
excellent. From the Not Job Trailer. John.
From the Not Job Trailer.
John, I am coming in November, so I will be able to see the actual job trailer.
Yes, yeah. My brother's coming down. We're going to football. We're going to lots of football, John. I know you're not a sports guy, as we've mentioned, but we're going to lots of football, buddy. And this is from John Greg. Has Jason always been this big of an asshole, or is this a recent development? Well, listen, it's a good question. Have I been a little shit brother? You used to call me your little shit brother.
That's awesome.
Have I always been like this, or was I better before, Greg?
I think actually one of my other friends, Kevin, who's the minority silent partner who you have to ask about in a minute,
we will,
actually calls when he says like, "Oh, how's your little shit brother?" So he might actually coin that term, John.
We're gonna give the silent partner credit there. So since it came up right now.
No, I have to answer the question first.
Right, yeah.
To answer the question, John. You know what? Not all of us can be blessed with all the wonderful, you know, Fitzgerald McKinnon genes. So some of them, you know, tend to be a little bit stronger in some parts of the family than the others. So, you know, do some of the McKinnons have a little bit more of that asshole gene? Absolutely do, John. And, and does my brother Jason look a little bit more like the rest of the McKinnons than I do? Yes. So I think, you know, sometimes it's just a little bit of genetics in there. Doesn't bother me any, but, you know, I'm sure at some point, yes, he's been a little bit of a little shit brother.
I like it. That's good. Thanks,
John. But not his fault, John. It's just the genetics kind of kick in. You know, can't overwhelm him.
See, I told you, buddy. It's not my fault. I'm just going with what I was built with here. Yeah. So you were we were talking there real quick. Did you see a real increase in the cost of materials, or more importantly, the availability of materials, Greg, when the pandemic was happening or thereafter?
So absolutely. So in the very first build, I had just recently retired. So I said to Nigel, like, you know, you're still teaching every day. I'm home. My schedule's pretty flexible, you know, with the, you know, being the retired, you know, pensioner working at the group home that I am. I'll do all the, you know, I'll get materials for us. I'll go pick up lumber. I'll go do whatever. And Nigel sort of warned me, you know, like, you know, it takes time, you know, no problem, whatever. Time, price was like incredible. You know, I'd call 5 places to find the special sheeting plywood we wanted for the inside, if they had any.
Yeah.
You know, I'd go to Home Depot and have to, because I refused to pay $10 for a piece of 2x4 that was twisted.
It was crazy.
So Nigel wouldn't come pick lumber with me because I'll sit there for like 5 hours to pick 10
I don't have the
pieces of lumber
time.
out. Just doesn't have the patience. He's like, Greg, you're going to pick lumber out today. But prices went up extremely. So I would say conservatively, everything was up 40, 50% easy. And it was just hard to get things, or we had to wait. Nigel usually deals with Nova Doors and Windows, our window company that we dealt with for a couple of them. You know, that was like a 4 to 5 month wait. I remember Nigel called one time and said, we want the gray siding we used for the last build. And they were like, no. Nigel's like, well, no, like, how long wait is it? And they were like, well, never.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah, we don't know if we're ever getting that back again.
Basically, the metal supplier was saying,
you can have black.
We don't know what's coming on in the truck.
Right.
We have no idea. So when it comes, it could be the copper, it could be the gray, it could be the... So no, we can't guarantee anything.
I ordered a... so then I got smarter. I'm like, all right, I'll go. I ordered an apartment-sized fridge. It was supposed to be like 2 months. Then Home Depot would call every month, 3 months, sort of, you know, bash Home Depot. 4 months, 5 months. We ordered a custom patio outswing door, and that was like 5 months getting here. So it was just a real struggle. But this build seems to be much better. Supply chains have sort of come along. Haven't been waiting long for stuff at all. Now, you know, it took about a week for the fridge to come in, about 2 days for the stove to come in. Like
very reasonable.
Oh, very reasonable.
But I can say
prices have come down a little bit, but now they're creeping back up again.
Well,
gas is more expensive.
My first build in like 2016, I think it was. I was paying like $2.50 for a stud, for 2x4 stud. At its peak, they were $10 or $12 for that same stud, and then you saw it sink back down to like $7, and now it's kind of back down to $4 or $5, but it's still not where it was. So it's like they're still almost double.
Hardware is incredibly expensive, like screws.
And then my father, his electrician, I think I mentioned, he would always kind of order the electrical stuff for us and get our panels, but like we couldn't get a 100 amp panel anywhere. It was so it's been on back order for so I think we ended up with 150 amp, like much bigger panel than we need in this build, just because there's just no panels, or there was we had electrical inspection on the other one, and we were waiting 4 months for certain breakers to come in because just no breakers.
That's going on all over.
Yeah.
I mean, I know every trade's dealing with it out there right now, and I'm not just trying to say the electrician's the only one dealing with it, but we're having a lot of trouble with very simple things, like you said, 100 amp panels, especially residential breakers.
Yeah.
I mean, you go into the Home Depot now, and the things that you used to occasionally, like, oh wow, I need a 3-phase panel for this. I haven't come across that in a while. That's all they have is strange stuff now. The regular everyday things are not even out there at all. So, and I don't even deal with the other parts of it now, whether it's building materials, tin studs, like plumbing piping. I know our plumbing department is having some troubles with that. So that thing at least it seems worldwide right now as far as not being able to find what you need.
Certainly for some of that stuff.
So Nigel, you two are able to wait this out because you're not on timelines with customers exactly.
That's right.
So you're not in a panic, right?
Yeah.
What if you decided to make this more of a, let's call it a legitimate business? When you do retire in a few years, you hire a couple people, you're building basically the same build every time. Are you going to be able to make a financial profit on these as it is now with building material costs?
Yeah, I think there's quite a market for it, because I think when you look at the price of what would have been a starter home, $500,000, I don't know who can afford that. So like when I start thinking of, like Greg was talking about his kids and my kids, I don't know how they're going to afford a place to live. So like
I couldn't afford to live in this house now.
Yeah. So like our city of Halifax has just approved container homes and tiny homes as backyard suites, accessory buildings. They're actually giving grants to people now to put these in to provide housing. So I think I could sell as many as I could build and make a profit. Because you don't want to do all this and not make some money at the end of the day either, right?
Absolutely right.
And I'm not trying to fleece people. Like I was telling you earlier, like as we were chatting before the pod show, that because skilled trades are in such demand right now, like there are guys out there really fleecing people, charging quoting $20,000 to do a $3,000 deck job.
Crazy.
So like I'm not out to do that either, but there's still. So yeah, I think we can make a profit. I think we could do well, and we could bill out what would be the equivalent of about $70 or $80 an hour, which is a fair wage for a trade in our city.
In any city.
Yeah,
really.
and so and with that comes all of the experience we have and the expertise and all the tools we bought and that's the other funny thing is, like, I've learned in doing this to appreciate trades more, because people don't understand when they see, they call a plumber to the house and the plumber can do the job in 15 minutes and charge $100 for that hour because he drove there and he gets his tools out as, $150 worth of tools and special pliers and then drives back home, and it's taken that plumber an hour and he bills you $100 and people are like, I can't believe he billed me $100 for what was a 15-minute job. Right. Well, it was a 15-minute job for him. It would have taken you 45 minutes to figure it out. You would have had to run to the hardware store, get what you needed. You would have had to buy the tools to do it. It would have been a $200 job for you to do. To
find out, you still had to call the plumber to come in and do it the right
and
way.
Fix it. That's it, right?
We say it all the time on the podcast, Nigel. You pay for the experience you get, not the amount of time it takes me to do it.
Yeah, and it took me until like really building these to realize that. Like, and it's funny, like the very first tiny house I built, I hired a plumber to come in and do the 30 minutes of plumbing, like literally to go because it was just a sink and a bathroom side by side and like tied in and drop it. And he didn't do it. He didn't do a great job of it because he ran the plumbing pipes right over the electrical outlet for the washing machine. And I'm thinking like, what idiot would do that? And so I actually had to like take it apart. And that's when I discovered like plumbing's not that hard. You just have to have the right tools, know how to do it. My father, of course, had all the tools and all the PEX crimpers and all the stuff to do the plumbing. And so Dad's like, here, let's just redo it. So I was annoyed that I paid this man like $300 to do an hour of plumbing. And I'm like, I can figure this out. So but I mean, there was some, again, I learned a few things. In terms of, where to put the sink traps so that they wouldn't siphon out and how to vent and everything. Because there is some stuff to that it's not as easy as it looks. You don't just drain a sink.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't just go straight down
there's stuff you got to figure out, right?
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot to be saying about the right tools. Yeah. We sort of have a running joke now, like you were saying about sometimes you need the right person to do the job. Sometimes you just need the right tool to do the job. So, I mean, in the first build, Nigel had this old, saw for cutting out holes, doing stuff. I just didn't have the right one. I said, I'm just going to get one. We're going to buy one. So I bought him a fancy new Milwaukee one. I'm like, here, the company just bought this for us. The company.
Right. Yeah. Quote unquote. Yeah, the company. Yeah.
He uses that all the time now. This is awesome. So now we have like a running joke about, oh my God, this is the best thing we ever bought.
Yeah.
Nigel
bought sprayer.
Nigel bought us a paint sprayer. Oh my God. Like 15 minutes. For the bad sound. Apologize for the bad sound.
No,
Thanks,
okay,
John.
Yeah.
The container's done. We both looked at each other. We're like, man, why didn't we buy one of these ages ago?
Yeah.
Well, that's the way to
we
go.
bought a set of...
am I allowed to say, can I have some of that whiskey?
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah. Also, I should point out, fellas, you guys have been excellent so far, and I got a drink and a half in me, so I'm going to start spin up here a little. You are allowed to curse on the podcast. It's totally fine. We do it all the time.
Yeah, it's my teacher in me. I don't have a podcast.
I understand.
Like
no, that's okay. You don't have to.
We bought a set of sawhorses. We're just like, man, why didn't we buy a set of good sawhorses? Like, 5 months ago, we bought a. No, I'm okay.
Sure.
We bought an electric caulking gun, but we bought a zip cutter for like cutting stuff out. We're just like, we use that all the time. We go, this is the best $70 we ever spent.
Yeah, anything that makes your life a little quicker and easier is definitely the way to go. Yeah.
And working in the shipping container, like having to cut through all that metal. Like every time you need to make perforation in a wall, you're going through corrugated metal. So like I was just like, if you need to cut a 2-inch round hole, you need a 2-inch hole saw that will cut through metal. Like you just need it. So,
you can't be using a jigsaw and trying to wing that.
You just go buy it, right?
Yeah.
So, so there's like just stuff like that you just learn over time. And
the more you do, the more. So it asked if it'd be profitable. I think the more things you do of anything, the more profitable it becomes. Nigel has at the job site or whatever, has a container there that we just have all the tools in, all the screws, all the caulking, all the paint, all
everything's
whatever.
There now.
The generator, my planer's there, the saw's there, all the tools we have, we bought together. But the amount of times that we would like have to go somewhere, get something, lug it from the garage when we were here at another build, like we're at his place doing something or his father's place. Now you just walk over the container, get it, use it, put it away. Stellar.
Because the first couple builds I did, and the first one with you, like we would be trying to do something and be like, oh, jigsaw. My jigsaw's up at the cottage. Oh, my jigsaw's out at my parents' place. Oh, it's at my garage. And then so that job would get kind of put on hold until the next time I came up to it.
Dedicated tools for the job site.
Yeah, so you need everything on site.
So even like
makes
for
such a difference.
My next job, which Nigel will be helping with, of course, is the hunting cabin, because I sold my hunting cabin a couple years ago that I own with our minority partner. I told him a non-negotiable. We're getting a shipping container delivered there first, getting power hooked up to it. That's where all the building materials and stuff are going.
Yeah,
because I'm not lugging stuff back and forth in the rain, in the trailer, and all that sort of stuff. That's a non-negotiable.
And real power, not a generator.
That's right, real power.
Real power.
That's true. Yeah.
Dedicated power.
Yeah. And honestly, you talked about the price of materials. You can't build an 8x40 by 10-foot tall shed for what you can buy a container for.
That's true.
I believe that. Yeah. But so I think if we were to make a go of this in retirement and start cranking out 2 or 3 a year, then you also have some purchasing power with your window supplier, and you can say, this is the window package I'm going to buy 3 or 4 times this year. Give us another 10%.
Exactly.
15%.
And this is where it turns from when I asked you originally, from hobby to business. You already have those relationships in place. That's crucial for people.
Yeah. And I think, and then you start getting your business accounts and you start, cheers, buddy.
Yeah, look, the boys are happy. Sláinte, we say on the podcast all the time.
And so then, then I think it starts to become a more even more profitable because you would already have your windows on site. So when you're ready to put the windows in, they're there, they're on site, they're ready. You're not waiting another week for them to come in because you've bought 3 packages of them. You've got boxes and boxes of the screws you need to do every single job, because there's times where like, oh, I need a little tiny 1.5-inch flathead for that. I need a 3-inch wood screw for that. And then. But just having everything right there and having, if I ever came across 100 amp panels, I'd buy 5 of them.
Right? Yeah.
We're talking about new things we learned, just to cycle back that.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
One of them is definitely how to frame out doors and windows in a container. So neither of us had done that before. That was brand new to us, so that would be, that would go much quicker on the next build, because now we're like, hey, it's not that complicated.
Did you have a struggle where you framed in a window or a door and all of a sudden you go to close the door and clunk? Wasn't in the right spot? Did you have any nightmares, I guess is my question? Anything that really didn't go your way during the builds?
I think just other than like, I probably needed to cut the window openings a little bigger.
No, and I'm the same.
Yeah.
We're both, we should really be cutting, window openings out 1/2 inch bigger instead of the exact size.
Right.
But I'm guilty of that too. So I the same as me.
Yeah.
But you can't
that's
uncut
what shims are
something.
For, but
right? Yeah, you can't uncut something.
We didn't know because it's
a
container, right?
Yeah.
So we've learned a little bit.
I think but I even said from the container, next time, after every build, there's always, next time we do this, we're doing this a little differently.
Sure.
So this build, we had 2 windows fit really perfectly flush on the high point of the corrugation.
Yep. They look awesome.
They looked great. Some of the windows, because we weren't sure how we were going to frame it all out. So some of the windows, they're on the bottom underside of the corrugation. So there's this kind of ugly part that comes out, and the window's kind of tied into that. And so trying to clean that up. So the next time we do something, it would be custom size windows specific to the corrugation of the trailer so that they fit on the flush top part, right? Yeah. And those are the details that some people would never think about, never care about, but it just looks better, it fits better, it's tighter, it's better all around.
For our last build, we had custom windows and doors made.
Yeah.
We waited 5 months to get them.
Yeah.
So this time we said, all right, let's just go with, standard windows and doors that we bought from local suppliers. Yeah. But then you don't get it would have been perfect if this was 2 inches wider, would have fit perfect.
Right. And it's just little thing, containers are their own unique beast, because trying to cut, as I mentioned, a 2-inch hole into it. Well, if your 2-inch hole is on that slope part of the corrugation, you're trying to drill a hole on a slant, and then you got to it's just, everything's just so much more difficult.
And the corrugation isn't the same on every container.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. Dimensions change.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, dimensions change for sure. They do. Yeah. I've seen enough of them on job sites. I knew that over the years. The reason I brought up if it was viable long term, maybe once you retire. So I had to look up a few statistics here. The average price of a home in Canada right now. Now, this is an international podcast, but we're in Canada right now. We're going to use metric and Canadian numbers this time, folks.
Doesn't everyone use those?
Yeah, you think only everybody but the States, and I think Uganda now. Sorry, Americans, but you guys got to go with the times here. $698,530. So let's call it.
Oh my God, is it really that much?
Let's call the average price of a home in Canada $700,000. Now, of course, today's homeowner.com. Let's assume the internet's the Wild West. Let's assume this is a reputable source. I really don't know. That makes a tiny home at this $52,000 level that they're talking about. If you include in property taxes and things like that, 87% cheaper than the average home. That's a gigantic number. That means that, according to what they've got here, and I didn't do the math real quick, but that would mean that 68% of tiny homeowners would carry no mortgage on an average down payment. Absolutely. Versus only 29% of homeowners that don't carry a mortgage on a regular size home. That's going to encourage a lot of people to want tiny homes, and they need a smaller property to put it on, and they pay less power. And it seems to me that once you guys get to the point that if you could be making 3 or 4 a year, this seems like a viable business. Do you guys consider this down the road?
We absolutely do, but you just talked about 2 of the things that are right there. Everybody wants to have one. But the problem is, how does traditional financing, mortgage financing work for a place that doesn't have a traditional foundation?
Good call.
That's on wheels. So everybody thinks it's a great idea, but the big problem people have is financing, and B, nobody has any property to put it on. So that is a stumbling block for people. I think most of the people will sell to at first are people who already have land, they already have a cottage lot, they already have an existing house they want to put a carriage suite on.
They have the finances to buy in cash.
Or they can have a line of credit on their house or whatever.
Right.
But that's Nigel's kind of really good about separating the tire kickers from the people that really are interested, because he knows kind of what questions. When they start asking about, how am I going to hook up this up to my septic, my well, and where am I going to put it on my lot? Well, then right away we know, hey, they have land.
Yeah.
They're interested. They're just not like, I'd love to buy it. Like, do you guys lease me the land? Like, I don't really see tiny homes being like trailer parks back in the day.
Yeah.
Where because what's the difference between a trailer park home and a tiny home, park, really? Not much difference.
Not much difference. Absolutely right.
That's right.
Yeah.
So even though they're probably a little cheaper, because now, like, a standard trailer in Nova Scotia is probably going for $225, $250. Like, still.
On that note, though, I'll just, so the financing is an issue, but that's an extension of all the other issues.
The banks need to get around that issue.
So the irony of a tiny home is the people that want one are people that are trying to buy affordable housing, and they don't tend to have the credit to do it.
Correct.
And so they approach a bank about, can I borrow $90,000 to buy this container home or whatever? And the bank's like, no, we can't, because that container home could disappear and be towed to Alaska, and we lose our credit,
and we'd have no idea
equity.
It ever moved.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, definitely.
So the bank can't mortgage it. So it would have to kind of function like some sort of a car loan or a home equity line of credit or something. They'll figure something out. But like, credit unions are better at having that flexible financing. So like, I'm affiliated with a credit union in town, and the general manager is like, look, we'll just finance it as a mobile home mortgage, which is a different kind of mortgage, because again, a mobile home, you could literally tow it somewhere else
where you want. That's right. Yeah.
So there's a gray area around financing, but there's a huge gray area around building code, occupancy permits, all that stuff. And that is the biggest hurdle. It's not even the financing as much as all the other stuff is the biggest hurdle for people who want to buy a container or buy a tiny house on a trailer, put it on a piece of land and live in it, because no city official, no office, no one will give you a straight answer on, yes, just go ahead and do it, you're good. Which is the frustration for me is, as an example, I have a piece of property 5 minutes outside the city. It's actually within Halifax Regional Municipality. It's in the city technically. And the property's vacant, and it's a beautiful ocean view, and it's a vacant piece of land, and the city won't let me because of building codes and
zoning and all this. Yeah.
They won't let me actually put that tiny house there. So on the right hand, the city is condoning and supporting tents and pallet shelters, and all this, they're supporting all that and funding it and putting generators to tents. And on the other hand, I'm saying I will put a tiny house there and have a nice insulated, warm, safe place for someone to live. And they're like, oh no, that doesn't meet zoning requirements. And so that's the huge obstacle right now is getting city officials to just let people do what they need to do. And here's the big issue, and I understand it 100%, is you can't have Joe Blow Schmo building some tiny house on a trailer that isn't safe, that he's towing down the road at 100 kilometers an hour,
that he never got inspected,
and it causes an accident and 2 people are dead, or that doesn't happen and he gets it to where it's going to be and there's a family living in it and there's no smoke detectors and the wiring isn't safe and it catches fire and people lose their lives over it. And so finding some balance between what we're doing in terms of, they're wired to electrical code, they're insulated to code, the egress is to code, everything's to code. Can we just get over this hurdle about the bedroom doesn't meet the 90 square foot code because it's 80 square feet? Like there's stuff in the building code that just needs to be accommodated or overlooked for the sake of, and there's been some movement on that in terms of sleeping lofts. There's been some movement in terms of loft ladders because it wasn't allowed. Like it just flat out was not allowed.
Right.
But there's still problems with getting occupancy permits. And that's like, for me, I would be like, I can imagine someone trying, like, no city official is going to go to your piece of property and kick you out of your tiny house that's insulated and say, go live in the tent. It just, that won't happen. But for some people who are worried about that kind of stuff, they just won't invest in the tiny house or go through because they can't get an answer about it.
So two things come up with that. So obviously politics and bureaucracy is fucked in Canada too, because it really is in the States as well. And the same as Canada in the States. Obviously, you got a homeless problem here because I heard you talking about pallet shelters and things like that. I just got a tour around town. I hadn't been back in a year, and I hadn't really been in the city much these last decade.
You hadn't seen all the tents?
No, I hadn't seen all the tents. So it's a lot like what's going on where I'm living in the States now, that obviously people think, and I hear people say all the time, oh my God, if things get worse, I'm moving to Canada. Like, don't bother.
Yeah.
It's the same all around. Everybody's having the same troubles all around. Yeah. And as you say, they'll let them get away with all that. Yeah. But then you did something professionally to code. You dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's. And what do they tell you? Well, now you can't do that.
Yeah. And another thing too, it's a taxation thing for the city. I understand it, their point of view. Here, this is let's say it's the assessment value of this house is like $850. So, we're paying $9,000-$10,000 a year in property tax. Well, that's good for the city. That's paying for roads and schools.
You make a good point.
Yeah. But if there's a $100,000 tiny house here, and I'm paying 1/8 of the taxes on that, but the city still has to provide me with all the same services. Well, they don't want people building, they want people building $1 million homes, not $100,000 homes.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the other big hurdle. So do you want people living in tents? Or do you want to be able to service people, but maybe not provide the services as much as we can afford right now?
All right. See, I'm always the devil's advocate on the podcast. I know John's laughing wherever he's listening right now.
Didn't John have more questions?
Yeah, I got another one coming up here. He put one in. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Here's the problem that I see with that, okay? Everything you say makes complete and utter sense there. However, take a guy like me and my wife, Michelle. We have a property. We have a home, we have a yard, we have all that. We pay all the utilities, but we pay for plenty of things that we don't need to pay for. I shouldn't be paying for the schools. I got no kids.
Well, and my kids are done, so I'm just paying for Nigel's kids now.
Right, exactly. So,
but I like Matt and Ben, so I don't mind paying.
Right, yeah, but so those sort of things happen. I think there's got to be some sort of governmental responsibility where they can realize that some people pay more than they really need to, and some people pay less. And if it puts people into housing versus tents, as we just talked about, there's got to be some understanding in local governments and bigger governments that this could be a viable option. I was looking online here, and like I said, I was doing a lot of research for this one because I wanted to come into this because I knew you guys were dug in, and I didn't really know much about the tiny home market. 40% of the homeowners right now who have a tiny home are over 50. That makes sense.
Yeah.
People who could retire, who could downsize, they put a tiny home on their little piece of retirement property. Yeah. Totally, totally good.
I could say I've sold 3 to seniors.
So there it is, right? Yeah, and that tracks with this percentage, right? Yeah. But also 87% of young people who are looking at their first home, and when they qualified here on today's homeowner.com, that young people were people between the ages of 21 and 27. Probably still a little young to be thinking about owning homes these days. It's not like it used to be. Who are 87% of those people very interested in the idea of having a tiny home as their first home. But they can't get into them.
Yeah.
If they can't afford the down payment for a real home, but yet they can afford almost the full payment for a tiny home with a very small mortgage to cover it, pay it off like a car loan in a few years. We've talked on the podcast before. It seems to me they're trying to keep people actively from being homeowners because the people who own apartment complexes and things like that, well, they make money if you never own a home and just rent from them forever. I worry that these rules, quote unquote, air quotes, are just to keep people from being homeowners now. Do you feel like it's maybe a little bit of that, Nigel?
Yeah. I think that would require too much foresight and planning.
You don't think the government has that in them to consciously screw people over?
I don't think that's the case. No, I honestly think it comes down to well-intentioned building codes designed to make sure places are safe, and they are trying to figure out how do we regulate the construction of building homes so that when we know families are living in them, they're safe and they're not going to blow over in the next wind, so they're secured well to the ground. they're not going to catch fire because the electrical is not done to code, and there's a short. Or part of the reason why drywall exists, I don't know what you guys call it.
Sheetrock.
We call it drywall sheetrock. Yeah.
Is because it meets a fire code, and it there's a burn rate on it, and so that's why governments don't want you living full time in an RV, because it's not bloody safe, because an RV will go up in flames in 3 minutes, and that's fundamentally why, right? On top of the whole, they're not insulated well, and mold will be inside them if you try to live in a winter, and it's not good for you. But I don't think it's ill-intentioned government policy. I think it's well-intentioned government policy, but it's kind of like the very first time I built with ICF block. ICF was relatively new to the market. The building code hadn't caught up to it. And so depending on what inspector you talk to on what day, they would tell you something different to do with your ICF. So, especially when it came to like running plumbing and running electrical in the foam walls.
Yeah, can you explain ICF to anybody who doesn't know who's listening?
Oh, so insulated concrete forms. They're, the styrofoam blocks that you piece together like Lego, and you pour concrete in to build your wall.
Perfect.
Makes a wicked home. Makes a strong, soundproof.
Yeah, very well insulated.
Very very well insulated. It makes for a great home, and I'd build one again. If I build another home, I would definitely do ICF again. But yeah, the building code hadn't caught up, and so we were running into all these obstacles of one inspector would say this, another inspector would say that, and they were contradicting each other. So we would be like, what do we do, right? So we'd make it up as we went along and just hope the inspectors went along with it. And so a lot of people don't know, but the big reason the whole tiny house on wheels came about is because it's on wheels, the building code doesn't apply. The home
permit required.
Nice end around, boys.
Yes.
Nice.
So no permit is required. The building code doesn't apply. Home inspectors have no authority or jurisdiction on something that's mobile on a trailer. So no one can say boo to you when it's on a trailer.
Sneaky smart. I like it.
Yeah, sitting on a backfield or sitting in your backyard or on your cottage lot. And that's the entire reason why this whole movement came about, is because it was a way to skirt building code. And similarly, like a shipping container is not a permanent object, because you can pick it up and move it instantly. And so technically the building code doesn't apply there either. And if I know there is most of the places in Nova Scotia, I could drop this shipping container, live in it peacefully, no one would ever bother me. But if you try to do that in the city in HRM,
first person complains to the bylaw officer.
Yeah, that's it. The first person that complains, whether it be a neighbor 5 miles down the street that doesn't like to drive by your shipping container that's there and devaluing their house.
Right.
The first time someone complains, it's, the bylaw officer comes out and says, I'm sorry, you don't meet bylaw regulations. It's got to go.
Right. But you guys aren't leaving those shipping containers on the outside. It's not a John Wick movie. You're putting a finish on them, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's, and I think that's part of I was talking to city officials about doing something down on that piece of property I had in Prospect on the water. I was like, this isn't just a rusty old shipping container, because that was one of the city councilors mentioned that. Well, we don't want some rusty old ship. I'm like, it's not a rusty old shipping container. It's got 2 coats of nice paint on it. It's got wood accent on it. I will have it all done up nice with some lawn and pea stone and a deck, and you won't even know it's a shipping container when I'm done. Right. But yeah, the answer is still a hard no. Right.
And let's face it, too, you asked about why things take so long. The pace of change in Nova Scotia is glacially slow.
Sure.
Here's an example. Do you have Sunday shopping in Minneapolis?
We do. Yeah.
Right. So for a long time in Nova Scotia, there was no Sunday shopping. And I'd go to other provinces and you could Sunday shop. I'd be like, wow, this is awesome. It's family day. It's Sunday. You can actually go buy groceries on a Sunday and cook. And why don't we have Sunday shopping? We didn't even have Sunday shopping in Nova Scotia for about 10 years after people voted to say it was okay.
Yeah, so that happened after I left, a long time after I left.
People actually even voted to have Sunday shopping, and they still wouldn't let us have Sunday shopping for another 10 years. But just the politicians changing their mind about little things like, would it be okay to actually have a different kind of house that isn't a 2-bedroom bungalow, split entry with asphalt shingles on the top and a concrete foundation? It just takes a long time for people to shape their minds around that.
And people come and go through those jobs too in government, and so you're talking to one guy one day, and 6 months later it's a new guy that's in the job, and you gotta have to explain it all over again to him. And And most of the people I've run into are very supportive of the whole idea, but they just don't know how to bend and get around the rules that they've established, because there's also Pandora's box to that too. When you start to, lift or ignore regulations and bylaws and that sort of stuff, is that you do end up with something does happen bad because these things were ignored. And so I get all that, but I to go back to what you said about homes and housing and $700,000, and I think what you're going to see with the younger generation is a shift back away from McMansions that were built all through the 1990s and early 2000s, and
up until last week when I've left Minnesota. They're still buying up farmland and buying McMansions now. Yeah, that's still active.
Like, if because I've lived in the 5,000 square foot McMansion 2-bay garage. I didn't need it. I wasn't any happier living in a 5,000 square foot home than I am in my current 2,000 square foot home, with 2 more kids on me too. I think that the younger generation who are way more environmentally conscious, don't have as much disposable income probably and I don't think are going to be as well off as us and our parents before us in terms of wealth. I think they're going to realize that, we don't need a giant house. We don't need to spend $200-$300 a month heating a giant house, of which we're only using 25%. I think if you look at the stats,
it's really low. Yeah, 31% of your average home is livable space, and the rest of it they're using less than 25% of the time.
This house right here is a prime example. So Haley and Connor are both at university. So there's 4 rooms in this house right now that never get used.
Yeah,
that I'm just heating. This room being one of them.
I was going to ask, what we're
3 bedrooms.
What
plus,
we're recording
plus
in right now. This bonus room hardly ever gets used.
The last 8 months, no one came in here once.
So there you go. That sums it up right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we that big 40 by 12 foot trailer that I built our cottage on, like my wife and I would go up with the kids and we would stay up there for a week or 2 at a time, and we would always say to ourselves, "This is all we need. Like when we retire and don't have kids, what more do you need? You need a bedroom. You got a kitchen that's functional that you can do stuff in, place to sit by the fireplace and watch some TV, and a deck to go out on, and we had acres and acres of woods to explore, but." What more do you need? You don't, why do you need 3,000, 4,000 square feet? Right?
If we had access to lots now, building lots, which are crazy expensive here, so we don't really have access to them.
Yeah.
But, I used to say to people, what a nice idea it would be for a young couple to, make their first house a tiny house, pay that off in 5-10 years, and then sell that.
Yeah.
If they needed something bigger, sell that tiny house, the people just take it, use that, 100, 150,000 or whatever as a down payment on their new house.
Yeah.
They'd have a big down payment in their new house. They could upsize and have a reasonable mortgage. What a nice way to get into a starter home.
Right. It seems like that would be a starter home. The new starter home, right? Exactly. Yeah. So let me shift gears real quick here. Some stuff. So John did ask us another question here right now, but it's something you sort of already answered, but we'll throw it back to you again just to get an idea. I know you two are only doing about 1 a year, give or take. But John was wondering, Nigel, recap real quick what the market looks like out there. I know you said you've talked to people and you were kind of negative on doing too many customizations, because then if they don't want it or it was a tire kicker, you're stuck with something like that, right?
Yeah.
Legitimately, what do you see as the market right now? If you weren't working as a teacher, working as an educator, you're retired today, you and Greg can jump after this. What do you think the market is? Do you think you could do 2, 4? Do you think you could sell a lot of these?
I would say realistically, I think we could build 3 or 4 a year and sell them. And if the regulations became more clear and there was a direct, easy path to buying it, setting it up on a piece of property or in someone's backyard and getting occupancy permits for it. If there was an easy path to that where it was clear, I think we could sell 30 a year, because I think everyone would be jumping on this as an in-law suite for
a cottage by the lake, a summer cottage.
So in-law suite, cottage,
in-law
teen suite,
teen suite.
Because there are a lot of people with 20-somethings living at home in the house, and they would like nothing more than to put them in their own place in the backyard.
On the back of the property,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Johnny's out back living in the tiny home.
So, if you've got anything more than a half an acre, you've got room to put a tiny house in your backyard, right? I think the impediment right now is regulations. but I still like most of the ones I've sold have sold outside of the city center. One of them is in an actual mobile home park in Yarmouth. Another one is on a field in Fredericton, I mentioned. Another one is on a cottage on a lakefront lot in Bridgewater, and no one bothers him, and he lives here full time, and that's fine. But I think if you lift that impediment of the regulations and that kind of stuff, I think it would be an unlimited potential for. Is that the sign?
That's
that you
the
want
sign.
some more
Yeah,
whiskey?
yeah. Since you took the bottle and put it down on the floor beside you, you're going to help me out. So part 2 to that. Again, you guys kind of touched on this quick, but Big Brother Greg. Most of your advertisement right now is what people would see on Instagram and Facebook. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely. It's pretty well
Thanks,
it. I
Nigel.
think Nigel's. I'm sort of the Instagram person. Nigel's the salesperson, I would say. We actually, that's something we need to be a little bit better at. Actually, my son got me a tripod for Christmas. We just didn't do a lot of interesting sort of stuff that's kind of boring finish work we do it in the spring. But we did a few videos in the fall, and we get 5,000 hits in a couple days, ones of Nigel using the tri-square, ones of, just doing little tours of people really kind of like that stuff.
Spraying the container.
Yeah, that was another one. Kevin's cutting out a window, people have been doing social media, like young people I work with said, oh, you got 5,000 views. That's awesome. Yeah. I had no idea. I was like, oh
yeah. By the way, that's awesome.
Yeah.
5,000 views is huge. Yeah. I bring it up because even a couple of people who follow us who are sort of weekend warriors when it comes to doing their own little projects have been following you going, oh, that's the easiest. Oh, that's a nice way to trim out a window. Oh, that's how you put in like a nice flooring. And so it definitely does help people out, because for the people who look out there and go, well, I don't have the skills to do any of this stuff. It's part of the reason I want to talk to the both of you, because you got day-to-day jobs. What you didn't know, you learned, and you're just sort of piecemeal as you go and you take the time. So it brings me to a couple of sort of like, not final questions, but ones that were really important to me.
Oh, just before you get to that,
yeah, please.
So I would say on the next build,
you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, definitely our next build. But even on the next, I'm going to do it more for building the cabin this summer, because now I know, for example, now I know kind of things that are really interesting. It would just take a minute to film. So I'll make a little, pre-list and say, okay, I'm going to film this. It's not going to take much time. We decided we always put pine accent in the top. Sometimes last build we just put it in the bathroom. This time I said, well, I have some extra dried pine in my garage, tongue grew pine. Why don't we put it for the whole ceiling? Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we wanted to make this one a little bit more modern, and so Nigel's like, let's whitewash it.
Nice.
So that was one of the things. Well, I'd never whitewashed anything before. So I actually sat there and watched a few YouTube videos. And I tried I think Nigel tried 1-6 white, 1-2 white, 1 part white, 2 parts water, until he sort of got to the right combination of 3 parts water, 1 part paint. That seemed to be the perfect thing. I would actually make a little short video of that, because that would have been super helpful for me to watch.
So many people would watch that,
people
brother.
Would,
so many people.
Because I just couldn't really figure it out. But intuitively that would have taken me a couple minutes to film. People would have been like, oh, that's how you figure it out. You're just like an old artisan. Like they always say, test the stain out to see a little spot to see how it looks, but you never do
on
that.
The back of the board. Nobody ever does it, right? Nobody ever does.
I actually had, and Nigel had the same thing. He had little, this is this one, this is this is this, So just little things like that.
That's a trial and error too.
Yeah. So there'd be a lot of fun sort of marketing things I would do, kind of like that for the socials. But I don't know how much that helps you sell things, but it's definitely kind of fun for people to watch.
Well, fun, yes, but also for the same time, now it saves another DIYer who's not doing something as big as the 2 you were doing, but somebody who's just, let's say, putting up wood slat in a small area in their bathroom. Yeah. Now they know the ratio to use.
Yeah.
That's a follower. That's somebody who's going to pay attention to what you do. Even if you help a few people out with your videos and you get some views, that's something.
And everybody comes in and loves that. Nigel gets credit for that. In the next cabin build we do, I'm already deciding, it's all going to be whitewashed.
Yeah. Well, you did no more whitewash, though. You did all the whitewash because you've got the patience. So that was all great.
Nigel's the idea man.
So that
Nigel's the boss, right? You have to mention that. The roles have flipped. Nigel used to work for me when I was his principal. Now I work for Nigel. So it's great.
It's funny how that goes sometimes.
It's great.
You guys just tripped over my next question sort of organically here. So I'll send it towards you, Greg, and then Nigel, if you want to jump in with your sort of perspective here. How did you find, and this is a 2-part question, how did you find a workflow split between who does what that you felt fair, that one guy wasn't doing more than they thought they should do, and how did you find the same balance with the finances, because there's a lot of material overhead in a job like this. So Greg, workload balance. How long did it take for you to both realize you're good at this, you're good at that?
So Nigel and I actually work really well, like, even organically together. We both have our strengths. We both have our weaknesses. So we learned a lot on the first build. We just have a simple Google Sheets worksheet. I keep track of all the expenses, save them all up to Google Drive. I got a little folder, keep track of them all. So we have a running tally of all the expenses. We have a running tally of every day and how many people hours everybody worked. So, this job, I'm like 424 hours. He's like 421 or something. Like we're almost right there.
And we try to keep the expenses pretty balanced.
Yeah, we do. So I'll buy a couple $1,000s worth of stuff. Nigel buys a couple $1,000.
So the first build, like I bought the trailer. It was like 12,000. So I was right away in 12. So I said, "Okay, Greg, you pick up the windows. They're coming in. Yeah. That's $4,000."
And we share that spreadsheet. You can see the lifetime updates or whatever. So that's really easy. That's easy actually.
And I don't even think we didn't keep track of individual hours of first job.
No, we didn't.
Think, but we just we wanted to know how many hours we were putting into it.
Right.
But we've been working together so long, and we have trust, because we've been business partners on the rentals for years, and I know Greg doesn't, he's not nickel and diming,
right? And
neither am I. So we just if he might work a couple extra hours here, but I might work a couple extra hours.
And the only reason we kept track of the extra hours this time is we had a third partner,
minority partner.
Yeah, so we mentioned that real quick. Let's get into that. So let's shout out
them, then I'll come back to
shout out the minority partner. Yeah,
yeah. So it all looks fun on the socials when you see people involved in side businesses and all that, and it's all great to tell all your friends that you're building tiny homes. So our mutual friend Kevin, super interested.
Awesome guy.
Awesome. We love him. Just like I wore Nigel down about being part of the business, he wore us down. He's like, all right, called Nigel, formed a company name, was going to incorporate, and all this extra work. I'm like, I didn't even know we were incorporating. We were, we were MW. He was
like, wait, cart, way ahead of the horse.
MMW Homes or something, and it was all. And he really, okay, great. Nice. He'd always get mad at me, and I said, well, you just have to ask Nigel. He's the boss. I didn't make any decisions. So, anyway. The only reason I kept track of the hours for the three of us, because I wanted to be fair. Because I kind of called it. I said, he'll last a couple weeks or a month, and then that'll be it. But it's not as much fun as he realized when you have to give up every weekend, every time you're not working. Tell your wife you're going to work all weekend.
Yeah,
work on the tiny home, all that stuff. So I think he has 18 hours in. Nigel and I have 220 hours.
He came out for 3 Saturdays.
3 Saturdays,
and then he was like, guys, I don't think I have time to do this, so I'm just going to be, I might be able to put in about 10%.
All right, so
we've never seen him since that moment.
I don't have to look him in the eye, and God love him, because I know who you're talking about. So I don't mind saying the name Kevin Wheatley. Shout out, buddy. If you ever listen to this, God love you, man. You're one of the best.
We're hoping you come back for the next one, full time.
Yeah. Apparently, the guys at Tiny Homes Atlantic are willing to have you back. Also, depending on if you ever do listen to this, Kevin, fuck your Bruins. They can kiss my ass. That's just a little side note there.
You're still gonna get your check. It's just not gonna be as big as ours.
Right, exactly. I still get paid for your hours, Wheatley. You'll be all right, buddy.
And definitely, people that work together have strengths and differences. Nigel loves to frame. Nigel's really good at plumbing. Nigel's good at electrical.
The big stuff,
flashing, all that kind of stuff. Right. Finish work.
I don't touch it.
The detail work. My brother. I know my brother.
Yeah,
I know Greg. Greg's detailed about stuff.
Do I spend a lot of time, putting extra coats of paint on and putting trim around windows and putting caulking on, things, and putting door trim in and all that kind of stuff. But we basically just sort of figured out, sometimes lately, even I've been working inside, he's working outside. He'll shout out, I'll come out and help him for a minute. He'll come in and help me for a minute. But that's never actually been an issue. We never even once said hey, you should do that or I should do that. Yeah. We just sort of jump in, and we're both capable of doing those things. So it's not like
the only thing he doesn't like is ladders.
I don't like being up on top of roofs. So
Nigel's the guy always on the
Nigel,
roof.
That's been forever. My brother hasn't liked ladders his whole life.
I will say I actually did put the 2 coats of paint on the roof of this one. I actually got up.
Oh, that's right. You did get up in the shipping
container. So I did want to contribute, because I didn't on the last one, because I actually said, Nigel, you have to get up and do the roof.
It was funny. I was
kind
of shocked.
I can do this one. Yeah. I can do this container one. I got
the first build I noticed after the third day. I'm like, Greg doesn't like going more than 2 rungs up on that ladder.
I actually got up and did it.
Yeah, we all know those guys. That's okay. Yeah, you put those times in of the part of the job you don't like occasionally, and then go, okay, I did my part. I'm not doing it again.
And we actually plan. I think that's good in any project or whatever. The next time we still haven't gotten to the point where we've totally mapped out timeline, which eventually we should. We keep talking about it. We said, okay, if we were actually doing it, if this was real what we were doing, okay, this month we're going to do this week we're going to do this week, but we actually do always sort of have a running thing. Like, we talk every week or so. Hey, next time we go out, we're going to do A, B, C, and D.
Right.
Next time we're going to do this, and this. So we kind of have that big picture. Like, we're both, work in the school system where we did a lot of planning. So it's not a big deal for us to keep the big picture in mind all the time.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good thing. So Nigel, I'll start with you, and I'm going to ask you both this question. How is it juggling this with home? Because you have a spouse, you have a couple of boys.
Yeah.
Is it tough to find the time? Is there a lot of conversations where you're looking at your wife, taking that deep breath, going, listen, baby, I got to put some time at the tiny home.
Yeah.
Like, is it tough to schedule all this to multitask?
So summertime, not so much. Because
God
where
love
I'm
the
a teacher.
teachers. Yeah.
Where I'm a teacher and I'm off in the summer, and I mean, there were many days I took my youngest fellow out, and he would help and just do some stuff, and that would be my younger one. My teen has no interest,
but Ben would come and help you out.
Ben would love to.
Okay.
I got a video. It was really cute. One of the second or third tiny houses I sold to an older lady in Yarmouth. There, I sent her a video of Ben like screwing in the floor joists and stuff, and she was like, "Oh my god!" But Ben loves it. But so Ben would come up. But the nice thing is my grandparents are right there, or not my grandparents, the kids' grandparents. So my parents are right there. So if I brought Ben out for a day, he would just drift up to Nanny's, and Nanny would feed him pancakes and take him out for bike rides and go to the playground and entertain him for the day.
Right.
So the summer's not bad. It's the weekends tough, and in 3 weekends in a row, my wife was like, "You need to do some stuff at home, and I need your help." And because it's a strain on her.
Certainly it is. That's why I ask it.
Yeah. So when I'm not there on a Saturday to get Matt to his soccer game and get Ben to the hockey rink, and it means she's doing it and she's lifting the weight. So, so there's a strain, and I keep kind of reminding her, like big picture, that means, we've got $10,000 more this year to go on our vacation when we want to go on vacation. Right. So that's, and she'll have her moments where she's like, yeah, no, you're right. Go. I know you need to get this done. Let's just go do it. It's fine. But she has her days where she's stressed out, and so it's a challenge, and I'm back in the groove now where we're trying to get this done. So I'm just like, look, like, you need to give me my time, and I got to get this done. And she's like, yes, just go get it done, because I don't want to hear any more about this. Yeah, I don't want to hear any more about this container home.
Right, and at the time of our recording, it's coming up to when Nigel's going to be back on teacher summer vacation, so he's getting close here. Yeah. Greg, same question. Is it tough to be away? Like, your kids are both off in college now. I mean, my niece and nephew, right? What is it with your spouse? Does she seem pretty cool about you being gone a lot, or what, man?
So John's wife's from South Korea too, right?
She is, yeah.
Yeah, so
adopted, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he can relate, because my wife's from South Korea. So basically, when I say I'm going out to the tiny home, she's like, "Great."
Does not care.
So she's just, she's understanding. 2 kids in university obviously is a huge drain, but I miss the days of teaching. Like, I've been averaging 84 hours or 96 hours a week at the group home, which people think a lot of hours, but you work 24 hours a day. Like, you work days,
long shifts,
kind of stuff. Yeah, so a lot of time, you're not up. You're hitting the hay, but still, and then putting in a couple days at the tiny home. Especially in the fall, like when the weather was nice, I'd sneak out a couple days throughout the week when Nigel was working, and do some weight washing, do this or whatever. So there was a lot of weeks where I was putting in well over 100 hours every week. But and my wife's taking her master's, and she's busy with school, so we definitely do miss each other. But we realize at the same point, all right, the drive is on. Got to get 2 kids through university debt free. So so not an issue. An issue for me because I'm always working.
It's probably easier when we were building here in your yard, though.
Yeah, it was a little bit easier.
Oh, yes, when it was 40 feet from where we're recording. I bet that was real simple for you. Yeah.
But it's pretty good. Like, when we were working out here, my mom would, make beef and barley every time for me and Nigel.
Best lunches.
Yeah. And now Nigel's mom, Christine, is the same. Shout out to Christine. And she always has a nice lunch for us every time we're out there. Yeah. And we should shout out to Nigel's dad, too, who's a retired electrician who's a huge help with the builds.
I was going to ask, what's your old man's name?
Blaine,
shout out Blaine. I hope you listen sometime. I'm a Sparky too. Blaine, shout out to you. Local 292 Minneapolis. I hope you're doing great. I hear you're making all kinds of money in your retirement working on the side. So that's good. So just at the very end here, so you've got your tiny home finished. The one that you're working on now is 98% complete. You're pretty close, right?
Yeah, we're on
it's done.
Yeah.
So let's say you do sell that one to someone specific. You don't have to have any hassle. Somebody comes in, I love it, ready to rock and roll. what do the logistics look like of getting that up on a trailer, delivered to whatever property they want? Is there a lot of hassle with that? Because where we're at in the States, transferring big stuff like that sometimes can get expensive, and they want it a certain time of day, and they don't want it out in the road past rush hour. Greg, what are the logistics like to getting these delivered to someone?
So actually, this is kind of the reason I'm excited we went with the container, because I actually towed the last tiny house. It's kind of a white knuckle kind of thing.
With your Jeep?
With Kevin's truck.
Oh, with Kevin's truck. Okay.
Yeah. So
shout out to Silent partner Kevin. Go ahead.
It's when you're driving 70 kilometers, 68 kilometers an hour for Bridgewater, and anyway, it's actually really easy to get a container moved in Nova Scotia. The tilt load truck just comes. They load it on the tilt truck, which just basically winches it on the tilt truck, takes it to where you want, drops it off. Yeah. So getting it moved, you don't need a wide load permit. You don't need anything. Basically, they just a little bit expensive, but probably to anywhere within Nova Scotia would be $1,500 to $2,000.
That's not crazy.
I think I forget what we paid.
It's $150 an hour basically for trucking. So from the truck
to have it delivered to
what's that?
Chantal?
Yeah, about $500. Yeah.
But that was taxes in or something. So just a couple hours from the container place. So
that's one of the questions that comes
Easy.
up. So we have this for sale now on Facebook Marketplace, and one of the questions that comes up is, can it be moved? And how do you move it? So I just say any trucking company or towing company can move a shipping container. They're moved all over the world all the time, every day. So the other thing I do like to do, even if it's tiny house on a trailer or shipping containers, I put that responsibility on the people who are buying it, because they always ask, well, can you just move it? Can you tow it? And part of the reason why I don't want the responsibility is because as soon as I move it and I get to their site, if their site's not ready or the hill is too steep or whatever, or there's mud, I don't want to be responsible for what's happening on their lot, on their land. So I sold the tiny house, the one that we built. I sold that one. I had bought it from Greg basically and put it on my lot on the lake, rented it for a year to a friend of mine from high school, and then sold it just in March. But the guy was like, can you move it? And I was like, no, but look, I'll coordinate the move for you. I'll do everything. You're going to sign the contract for the movers and pay them, right? Because I just didn't want any responsibility there of what was going on, messing around in their small little space, trying to get it down on their lakefront.
Yeah. Who details what kind of foundation needs to be underneath that when it's delivered?
No one. So that's a tiny house on a trailer, so it's on wheels.
Oh, okay, so it's a trailer.
Yeah,
okay,
so you can do what you want. So there are one of the things that came up in my conversation with shipping container and how we can get occupancy for it. So again, this is stuff I've asked, and this is the time that we pour into these things that people don't realize. It's time consuming, but a lot of back and forth emails with city officials just in the last month, and so that it needs to be secured footing. So that means, in their mind, it needs to be a post in the ground, like a concrete pylon that the shipping container is kind of pegged to, so that it doesn't blow over in the wind. Literally.
Yeah. So actually, I looked closely at the building permit I have for my shipping container shed, which is going to be powering up to, and it just says anchored to the ground.
Yeah.
There's a little note that says anchored to the ground.
Okay. Yeah. So their anchoring means it doesn't sit on the ground. There's an anchor in there, right? So something that will prevent a high wind from blowing it over.
So there's a benefit to Tiny Homes Atlantic just by saying, okay, we've built the product, here's who we use to move them, but once you pick it up, you need to know what you're doing. Okay, that makes sense. You have to define a line in the sand where this is where our responsibility is. That's what I was wondering. Because it seemed to me you could get into the weeds with pickup and delivery, and like you say, you get there and the site isn't ready. I was curious where your line of responsibility would come to an end. So once you're done with the build and it's sold, okay, come pick your tiny home
come
up,
pick it up and go, right?
Again,
it's just like I've just learned over the years, like I don't want, as you said, to get into the weeds, because if you show up there on a job site with a truck that's cost $150 an hour and their foundation isn't level, well, then I'm the one that has to solve that problem now, because it's my truck and I'm responsible for shipping this thing. So, or if that hill's too steep and the trucking company says, I can't back down that hill, we're going to have to drop it off the top here. And then the owner's looking at me going, well, you got to get it down over the hill now somehow, because I paid you to deliver it.
Right.
So I just want nothing to do with that piece of it. It's on them once it leaves my yard, right?
This sums up this whole conversation perfectly of how do you figure out how far you want to take your personal part of this job. So, gentlemen, we could go on in the weeds here for another hour here, I think, but let's call it. I wanted to bring the both of you in today because we talk about all the time on the podcast, using these skills for things outside your regular day-to-day jobs. A couple of educators, I know my brother's retired, but being able to use these skills to have some sort of side business, hustle, hobby, whatever you want to do. And you both pointed out some really great things as far as you need to see the big picture in your hobby that you're going to have. There's more than just, oh, I know how to do carpentry and electrical. I'll just build tiny homes. But what about material? What about workload share? What about the things we don't know how to do? Or when should we pay somebody to come in and take a professional job at spray foam, for example? Yeah. So the two of you really hit everything that we talk about all the time right in the head. I'm really happy with how this went. Anybody who wants to check them out, again, it's at Tiny Homes Atlantic on Instagram and Facebook, right, boys? Yeah. Lots of good pictures up there. My brother just promised on air, so he's going to have to put more videos up now. He pigeonholed himself without even realizing it. But please check the boys out. They're putting up content all the time, and even though they're only making the one a year now, this could be a big business once they both retire. And it seems to me, from the research I did and the talk with the guys today, that this market is definitely going to get bigger over time. Nigel, Greg, thank you both so much for taking the time to come in today and being the theoretical job trailer. Hopefully next time you're in the real one with us. Everybody, thank you for listening all the way to the end. I know this was a little one here, but we had some guests with us today. As always, please send us any emails, any DMs you want. We're always looking for content. John and I appreciate you checking us out on the Buy Us a Beer app on our website, isawpodcast.com. We really appreciate all the love everybody's sending us there. And we have a couple episodes coming up very soon that are suggestions from our listeners. We encourage everybody else to please do that in the same way that we'll talk about just about anything at all around the break table. It might not be construction related. We definitely will take any suggestions you have from us. We got a couple interesting ones coming up over the next few weeks here. Please reach out and let us know what you think. Everything, rate, review, subscribe. And if you don't do anything else today, please check out both Nigel and Greg on at Tiny Homes Atlantic. It's a real interesting site, and I appreciated sitting down with the both of you today, gentlemen. Hopefully we'll see you again sometime.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Our pleasure.
Appreciate it.
I was supposed to preface both of you with this so that one of you could say it, because we're supposed to do it every single time we have a guest on. Greg, do you know what our motto is?
It's the work that you do that keeps the world running.
Your work keeps the world working. That's close enough.
Close.
I'll take the benefit, or I'll take the loss for not
Right.
saying that. Thank you very much, folks. And until next week, please be safe.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.